My name is Debbie Givens, and I am the chair of what's called the Research Intensive Programs in Physical Therapy, or RIPPT. And we are so happy that this has become a somewhat popular series. And this is, I think it's the third one in our monthly seminar series. We have one just on research during COVID. Then we had a great one on just how to build a research program and support researchers. And so we skipped during the endless month of combined sections. So kudos to you all who are back again after that endless Groundhog Day of February that went over and over. And so this is March. And so this is something we're hoping to continue through this year and beyond. And it's a seminar series and a research focused webinar that hopes to bring topics of interest to the community of researchers in physical therapy and beyond. And I'm really excited that not only we have a great topic tonight, where I'm able to bring some of my colleagues here at UNC Chapel Hill, but on April 13th, we're able to bring Dr. Liu from the University of Southern California, who is an exceptional researcher on big data analysis. So she'll be our next speaker, which April 13th is a Tuesday night. And she's doing an amazing job in doing big data analysis in an open forum. And so I'm really excited for that. I've already had at least one volunteer, but we would like to hear from those of you who are working on or have been successful in the very recent past on building a research intensive program. So, or you're in the process, or you're aspirational for that. We want to hear from you. We want to hear about your challenges and how that's going. And because RIPPT is about, again, not just the research intensive programs, but supporting those who want to become research intensive programs. So if you are in that process or have just feel like you've just recently achieved that goal, we would like to provide a panelist discussion of that in one of our upcoming seminars. So please email me if you're interested in participating in that seminar. So tonight's topic is about mentoring faculty and PhD students and advancing a collaborative research culture. And I've provided this model that I hope sort of reflects the philosophy that I have followed in my own experience as a director in the different programs I've been a leader of. My background is that I ended up being the interim and then finally the director at the Ohio State University Division of Physical Therapy. And then I wandered out to Creighton University and was chair of their program. And then finally decided I was an East Coast girl and came back to UNC Chapel Hill. So I have a fair amount of experience directing different kinds of programs and bringing in and hiring different types of faculty. And so it's really important to me. One of the most important things is collaboration and mentorship. And when I came to Chapel Hill, it was clear that that was one of the most important values that I found, not only in the Division of Physical Therapy, but widespread among the university and within the division, as well as the Human Movement Science program. So it was a good fit for me, and it's a good way to articulate how we do this here. Hopefully you'll learn some things, but hopefully you'll also identify from some things of some of the things, the processes we follow and the values that we hold. And so I thought this model was good because it sort of shows that all of these linkages are important, because as I mentor faculty and work with them, they in turn are working with students. I'm also working with colleagues, and all of these things are serving as role models, and people are paying attention to how I behave, how faculty behave, and students are future faculty, colleagues, and directors. And so I know I found this in my own training and my own experience as I moved through my career, and I've tried to emulate the best of the best that I experienced. So as I go through this, I want to talk about how I view my mentorship starts even before I hire this person, and it's while I'm recruiting them. And then it goes on to onboarding them, and then being mindful of the ongoing support that I need to have, as I'm going to really focus more on the faculty person, because the other speakers are going to talk about more of the process of the faculty member and then the PhD student. So as I'm talking to my faculty in faculty meetings, we're going to be talking about the planning, and I'm going to be talking about my superior. And it's like, what is it that we need as a faculty? What can we support? Because if we can't support someone with certain types of expectations, if we don't have the lab space, if we don't have the equipment, if we don't have certain types of PhD programs or things like that, we're not going to be successful in bringing certain types of people in. And then the other thing that's important is, what are workload expectations? Are we looking for a teaching faculty member, or are we looking for a research faculty member? Tonight, we're really going to focus on bringing in specifically a research faculty member. And on our faculty, we have people who are referred to as fixed term, and we have people who are referred to as tenure track. And workload expectations have very different expectations based on those types of job descriptions. And even within those job descriptions, their workload expectations are different based on whether they're doing clinical practice or teaching or different things like that. And then the other thing is, because we are a state university, and probably even if you're not a state university, I have to really figure out how to maximize the available resources that I have, and how to multiply, take 0 times 0 and make it 10. So as I have taken that and I've put this in the hands of a search committee, and I usually try to make the search committee of the most recent people who have been recruited, because I feel like they have the best sense of what it takes to, what it feels like to be recruited, and and some people who are very sensitive to the research enterprise, but try to also include diversity and perspectives of teaching, because I want to impart the collaborative culture we have. But I do think it's important to have someone who was recently recruited to us, because if they can't sell what it feels like to work for me and with us, it's not going to be a good experience, and we're not going to be successful. So as we have identified the top candidates and we start to talk with the top candidate, I'm like, what do you need to succeed? And I try to talk to them about, what is your ideal wish list and what is your really, really have to have. And I need to know as much as I can about what you have to have versus what is ideal, and try to match the best I can for that. So I'm looking for what space, equipment, what are the pilot funds you need for clinical research, what special software and personnel. Oftentimes we have a lot of software available at a reduced cost, but sometimes there's special software that we may not. have you looked at our institution and what are the things that we can brainstorm and think about as far as potential collaborators? What kind of clinical resources and patient populations do you need? And, you know, we're a state university with a lot of outreach across the state, but I want to make absolutely sure we have what you need to succeed, because if we don't, it's not going to be a success. So we're looking for a match rather than to give you a snow job or try to just bring in someone who we, you know, if you can't succeed here, it's not going to be a happy union. So I'm tapping into really what do you need to succeed here. And I'm really trying to figure out what your 3 to 5 year plan is. And if you have something in writing, that's even better. So you get here, and as soon as you get here, I'm starting to talk to you about, hey, we need to get you a mentorship committee. And this is what the next phase is going to be. I want these people to be not only within my division or department, but I want them to be outside, because if they're inside the division and department, they'll understand the culture, what you need to succeed, what the resources are. But if they're outside, they'll also be a good resource for you. They may be collaborators. They may be people who will put you on grants. They may be excellent, more senior to you and give you some good advice and read your grants. They may be connectors to other disciplines that you need to absolutely succeed and to make inroads. So all of these things are on the table, and I'm sitting there trying to talk to you and think about all the connections I know and who you might know. And it could be internal to the university, or at UNC, we have a really strong connection to NC State, which has a very strong engineering degree, engineering and other kinds of opportunities. And these guys will talk more about this. There are internal opportunities, and every university has this, so I'm not going to go into what's available at UNC. And then external opportunities. I'll say, hey, you know, I was on the awards committee for the Research Academy. So there's these traveling fellows. Look at these, put them on your calendar, make sure you apply for these. Here's what you need to do. Here's how you need to articulate this. There's the Tiger Workshop. This is something that is an NIH sponsored workshop. If you aren't applying for this, you're not going to be getting the best mentorship for an NIH grant. If you're musculoskeletal, there's the Bone and Joint Young Investigator Initiative. There's the MR3 network, which is, again, another NIH resource. We could go down to MUSC and learn, you could learn about brain stimulation or something like that, or go to one of the other networks. There's the Foundation for PT, there's the APTA academies. All of these things we're talking about as far as grants to start looking at, places to go for training or something like that. I'm going to talk to you about your workload. If you're coming to me as a researcher, I'm probably talking about, ideally, I'm going to protect you 25%, give you other things to do, and 75% research. And that's going to be ideally for 3 years. But you got to come up with something within 3 years to fund yourself for 75%. And that's like a K award or an NIH grant or some collaborations. Now that's the dream. That's the dream. But again, we negotiate. It might be 50-50, 50% research or something like that. This is why oftentimes we don't hire people in the kinds of places that I've worked at, like Ohio State and UNC, unless they've done a really good postdoc, like a 2 or 3 year postdoc. I'll be helping you with networking. And when we're at meetings, I'm introducing you to people. I'm putting you out in these seminars. I'm doing the best I can to put you to places where you need to be meeting the people you should meet. Recognition. The first thing on our faculty member agenda is to celebrate accomplishments. I'll nominate you for internal awards. I'll nominate you for external awards. I'm looking, and my colleagues, I'll ask colleagues to look for awards that we can nominate you for, because I want your trajectory to reflect your accomplishments, and so that when you go up for tenure and anything else, it reflects the talent that you have. It's not artificial, it just makes sure we're very intentional about that. And then finally, I'll check in on you. How are things going? Do you have a good work-life balance? With COVID, it's been difficult. I probably have fallen short with this, but I really want to make sure that you are taking care of yourself, taking care of your family, and trying to maximize this potential. And so finally, you know, I want to say, here are some of the people that I have put through some of this process just from a research. I've hired a lot of people. I'm not taking any credit for their accomplishments, but they can say they've gone through some of the Givens process. I think I see Terry there. He was hired by Creighton before I got there, but he can attest to the fact that I probably had him in my office every week going, what the heck are you doing? Put him up for the Eugene Michaels Award. And, you know, some of these other people were have been part of my recruitment process. So I would hope that they would attest that I was either on their back or worked them through the process, or hope that, you know, gave them this kind of support that they needed to have some of the successes that you might see. So next, what I'd like to do is share, again, we're going to hold questions for the end. And as I said, I'm not taking any credit for the successes. I'm just saying this is my value and how I like to lead a department. And we have a formal mentorship program at UNC Chapel Hill. And I'm going to share a document. And while I share that document, I'm going to turn it over to Jessica Cassidy, who is a junior faculty member in my department. And I'll put this in the chat, the document.
Hi, good evening, everybody. I'm Jessica Cassidy, and I am currently going through the Givens process myself. So I started at UNC March of 2019, and right as COVID was ensuing, I had the opportunity, a service responsibility, to serve on a board of diverse faculty in our Department of Allied Health Science that were essentially revising our faculty mentoring and development program. And so I'd like to share kind of a key feature, or a couple of key features, with you. And advanced here. Okay, so the objective of our faculty mentoring and development program within our Department of Allied Health Science at UNC, there are many objectives having to do with networking and understanding promotion and climbing that career ladder. But I would say our primary objective is to really ensure and empower faculty members to shine in their given responsibilities within the institution. When we talk about eligibility, individuals that are identified as instructors or assistant professors like myself are heavily encouraged to participate in this program. And even individuals with a higher rank are also encouraged, especially those whose roles are changing or evolving, those that are undertaking additional responsibilities that maybe they didn't have at their prior rank. And then the process. What I want to highlight about the process is that it's very mentee driven. It's the mentee that's putting together their mentoring team, scheduling times to meet with their mentors, assembling an agenda, writing goals, and then also completing a bit of documentation to bring back to their division director at the time of their annual review meeting. And so we'll talk a little bit more about the process on the next screen. And again, Debbie is sharing much of what I'm talking about too. So this is a table that we put together while we were revising. And what I want you to pay attention to is what's outlined in the blue box. And so we identified some key tasks: establishing a mentor and mentoring team, scheduling mentoring meetings, preparing for those meetings, what should be happening during the meetings and then following the meeting. And what we really wanted to enunciate well was the role of the mentee, the mentor, and the division director. So for instance, during the meeting, it's the mentee that's leading the discussion and identifying the milestones and setting the goals. The mentor is providing evaluation and feedback and partaking in that conversation. And the division director, it's optional. If they want to be present, it's up to the mentee. But really, the division director kind of comes into this program as a way to bridge mentees and mentors. So, facilitating those introductions that Debbie was talking about. And again, kind of that networking aspect. So just a few common questions that come up and that have come up in discussion when we were sharing this revised plan with the rest of the faculty. Can this program incorporate previous mentoring committees? So for instance, if I had a K award and I already assembled a mentoring team that has a great track record of working together, absolutely, you can certainly keep that mentoring team. Who ensures completion of mentoring documents? Again, that's on the mentee, consistent with this being a mentee-driven process. How do mentees find mentors outside their department? Again, that's where colleagues and the division director can come into play to provide suggestions and to give those introductions. Should the mentee directly reach out to potential mentors? Absolutely. That's part of the process and part of the fun is reaching out and doing those initial introductions. Must mentors hold higher ranks than a mentee? Not necessarily. So again, this is in line with the flexibility of our program. If there is a mentor with a specific experience that the mentee would benefit from, by all means, bring them onto your team. And can the committee change over time? Absolutely, because a lot of the goals and responsibilities might change accordingly. So again, kind of there's that fluidity aspect along with the flexibility. The last thing I'd like to touch on is that we emphasize mentoring over coaching. And so we think of mentoring as providing kind of an overview of career development across a span of time. Whereas coaching is the direction to give somebody acquisition of a certain skill set. Another way that you can think about this is that mentoring is a discussion between the mentor and the mentee, talking back and forth, sharing experience, etc. Whereas coaching, the coach is often talking to the person that they are working with in order to provide them that skill set. And so our program, again, really harps on the mentoring versus the coaching aspect. So for me, my research interests are in neural network connectivity patterns and motor development and in post-stroke motor recovery. And so I couldn't help but put this in here, just showing that my mentoring network since coming to UNC is growing. You can see some of my neural network mentoring nodes. I'm also building my menteeing network. And so I have undergraduates, graduates, postdocs, and doctoral level physical therapy students entering my lab. And so that network is also growing. And the different colors represent individuals at different institutions. So I have many resources and individuals at UNC that are helping me traverse this tenure track path. But I also have individuals at my postdoc institution and graduate institution and even undergraduate institution that I certainly keep in touch with, and they certainly help me too along this process. So I'm going to hand it on over now to two members on my committee, and that would be Jason Franz and Mike Lewick. So I will stop my screen share and hand it over to them.
All right, thanks, Jessica. And Jason is going to share our single slide that we are going to discuss. So my name is Mike Lewick. I'm an associate professor in the Division of Physical Therapy, and I also hold a joint appointment in the UNC-NC State Joint Department of Biomedical Engineering. And we were asked to talk about our kind of mentoring vision, kind of as it relates to Jessica, but I think Jessica did a really nice job of emphasizing that she has a large network. And although Jason and I form her formal mentorship committee here at UNC, I think it's important that she has other people that she can talk to, that she can go to, and seek advice from outside of UNC. I think it's also important to recognize that while we're talking primarily about mentoring, junior faculty and mentoring graduate students, that everybody needs mentorship, and everybody's getting mentorship from somewhere. And that's, I hope, true of all of us, regardless of what phase you're in. You kind of always need some sort of mentorship. And I can say there's people on this call that I turn to when I have questions. So, just recognizing that, I think, is important. So Jason and I are going to talk about our kind of mentoring perspective from both within and outside of the Division of Physical Therapy. And we do offer different perspectives, and I think that's important. As Jessica mentioned, I think the most critical thing to do is to make sure that we're discussing the mentee's goals. Now, when we're thinking about goals, it's not our goals as a mentor, it's the mentee's goals, and making sure that we're focusing on where they want to get to is really important. So figuring out where somebody is currently and then devising a plan to reach those goals, that's really the key to this. But really just focusing on what their goals are going to be. Setting up a roadmap for helping you achieve whatever those goals are going to be, and breaking things down into smaller steps is important. And I think that's where a mentor's experience comes in. You could think about the sorts of things that you've done, the sorts of things that other people have done, and can offer advice as to how to break things down into smaller chunks to achieve long-term goals. But it's really critical that your experience and your expertise does not serve as the only way of doing things. There are many paths to get to an end, and it's just because something worked for you doesn't mean that it's going to work for somebody else. And I try to remember that every time that Jessica and I talk. I try to remember that every time I talk with the PhD students, that I can offer things that have worked for me, and I can offer advice based on what I know, but that's all it really is. It's not a guarantee that it's going to work for you. It's not a guarantee it's the right path. It's just kind of what's worked for me, and maybe this might help you and get you kind of thinking about something. So I just try to offer my perspective from that, on my experiences. And then I go back and forth between thinking about, how much do I need to listen versus how much do I need to talk, right? Because at some points you just need to be an ear, right? You just need to let somebody talk. And in many cases, I think, and having been a mentee and being a mentee as well, sometimes you just need to talk something out, and you just need somebody to listen to you. And you need to know as a mentor when to just listen and just shut up, and when to offer some advice. Because there are times when, if you don't know what to ask, sometimes you just need to be told what to do. And I could think of times for myself, I just needed somebody to tell me what to do. And those are times when you don't even know what you're supposed to be asking. You don't even know what direction you're supposed to be going. And sometimes it's just, it helps to have somebody say, you know what, you really need to think about doing X. And that can be really valuable as well. So, Jessica and I and students and I, we meet regularly. We have regularly scheduled meetings, as Jessica mentioned. It's part of our formal mentoring plan. But it's also important that mentees know that they can approach a mentor at any time. And you shouldn't have to wait for a meeting time to ask a question. You shouldn't have to wait for a meeting time to seek advice. If something's bugging you, if you want to talk about something, approach your mentor. And as a mentor, you need to make sure that you have an open door policy. I think it's really challenging as a mentee to know that you have to wait in order to ask questions or ask for advice. So my thought is, kind of keep that open door policy. And I think the other thing that's important, as Debbie said, is making sure that you're promoting mentees. And that's important for junior faculty. It's important for graduate students. For example, Jessica just got a grant this week, so kudos to her, which is outstanding. And we're all very proud of her. And we're grateful for all her achievements, and we know that there's going to be many, many more. And part of my goal as one of her mentors is to look for other opportunities for her. And so when I'm talking with my colleagues, I'm always thinking, is this something that Jessica might be suitable for. And you know, she's been instrumental in helping to formulate some of the grants in BME. And you know, I think that our goal as mentors is to help look out for mentees and make sure that they have opportunities, you know, to participate in as many things as possible. So, and then I'm going to leave this for Jason because I'm sure we're running out of time here. But the only other thing I just want to offer is I like to finish conversations with a question of what can I help you with? Because I always want to offer. I don't want a mentee to have to feel like they're asking for help. And I think it's important that offer is always out there. It's a standing offer. Let me help you. Whether they take me up on that is another story. But I want to offer help and not make people feel like they need to ask for help. So, and I think that just goes to being open in the relationship. So. And I'm going to leave it for Jason. Hopefully I didn't steal all of Jason's thoughts.
Well, it's funny, right? Because Mike and I spoke about our approaches to mentorship, and we share similar philosophies. We want the same things, right? And we all we made a list of words on a screen, and certainly a lot of us would share these for the people that we mentor. My name is Jason Franz. I'm an associate professor in our UNC/NC State Joint Department of Biomedical Engineering. And I was looking at this signpost as Mike, who is a mentor of mine, was talking. What do you notice about the arrows? They're not all pointing in the same direction. So I was thinking like, well, maybe we're not going to get everything from the same person. And that's sort of what I wanted to speak about a little bit, was just the role of interdisciplinary collaboration on the mentoring committee. You know, interdisciplinary perspectives. It's not something that we just value for our students as we're putting together their dissertation committees, right? It's certainly something we value there, but there's a lot of benefit to getting different perspectives, even from Mike and I, who have very similar philosophies. We'll meet with Jessica, for example, separately, and that's important because it's the nuances and the way that they might say the same thing in a different way. And I think one of the things that is important to me is helping the junior faculty, the mid-career faculty, the senior. You want to find your own path. You want the mentee to find their path. And I think that signpost analogy looks great. And another thing is, you know, I often question, and many of us do, like, how in the world am I qualified to mentor somebody of Jessica's caliber? She's getting grants this week, super strong background, and you know, I'm, as an outside member of her committee, you know, I'm learning a lot as well. This idea of bottom-up mentoring as well. Jessica, the mentee becomes the mentor a lot, and I think that it's this full circle of the neural network and the feedback loops that Jessica put together help a lot. So just briefly, Jessica and Mike mentioned that the mentee bringing to the mentor a vision for what they really need from you, I think is good. The individual development plans are a really valuable tool for you to do that. It's not just valuable for our students. It's not just valuable for our postdocs. I think it's great for everyone to develop these development plans, to put them together, to show what your strengths and your weaknesses are, what your vision is, where you want to go. And maybe Jessica might speak to that a little bit, or I think it's incredibly valuable. There's a lot of resources, templates you can use. There's also, just like practically speaking, what do we talk about? Well, I think Jessica would be open to me sharing some things that we've chatted about over the last 2 years, and we meet regularly as well. Because it's important to me, the first one I put up here is work-life equity. We talk about work-life balance. Sometimes that idea of balance comes with guilt when you're not balanced, when you have to spend more time at work, or you have to spend more time at home. And equity, I think, is a good perspective on that. Just knowing when you're allowed to or need to balance those things at any given time. We've talked about how to engage students in our lab meetings. You know, Jessica is forming her lab and growing her lab. And especially amid COVID, it can be difficult to make sure that students are engaged and making sure that, This trickle down mentorship is something that I'm learning in my own research group and passing that along. Pathways to productivity and time management. Some of these are really classic examples of things, time management skills. I did want to speak to two benefits I think that having an interdisciplinary member of your mentoring committee brings. One is that in this case, Jessica's work is highly technical, and many of you in physical therapy are doing work that either using really sophisticated tools, instruments, technologies, or analytical approaches. And sometimes you need a pipeline of trainees to support that area of your work. And a lot of times physical therapy and engineering has this really organic collaboration. And we've been fortunate enough to put some of our undergraduates from biomedical engineering in contact with Jessica, and that's worked out, right? And that can work out in any number of disciplines. The other is, again, the signpost. We're not good at everything. Funding opportunities to physical therapists are incredibly diverse. NIH comes to mind, and Debbie brought up a number of other resources, but sometimes we might go to NSF. Sometimes we might go to DOD. And having backgrounds of diverse experiences and perspectives can point you in new directions for grantsmanship. And certainly when it comes to somebody that's doing sophisticated analysis of neural networks and brain and muscular coherence and stuff that goes over my head a lot of the times, it can be really valuable to have members of a mentoring committee that can provide specific guidance outside of those traditional funding mechanisms in physical therapy. I want to leave time for questions. I had lots of notes, but I hope I was able to bring something to this conversation as a non-physical therapist, like I'm able to hopefully do for Jessica's mentoring committee. So thanks.
Thanks, Jason. Thanks, Mike. I'm going to share a little bit more here. So back to neural networks, just kidding. What was alluded to in the last conversation was this role, or this rather tool that I find really important to mentoring, and that's the Individual Development Plan, or IDP is what I'll refer to it as. This fall, I was able to take advantage of a fantastic program through our UNC Center for Faculty Excellence called Team Advance, targeting equity and access to mentoring training. And we learned more about the Individual Development Plan. And I can say as a postdoc, I completed one, and it's fun and interesting being on the other side now as the mentor. And it's something that I'm using with my graduate students. And so for those that aren't immediately familiar with an Individual Development Plan, I consider it to be a roadmap, a living document, basically stating my graduate student or postdoc's goals, both personal, professional, academic, what have you. We talk about accomplishments, and unlike those accomplishments that we might list on our CV, we really talk about those accomplishments that are more broad in a generous sense. So maybe it's revising and resubmitting that grant or paper, something that you wouldn't necessarily put on your CV, but it's certainly worth celebrating. We talk about research goals. And so when my graduate students write goals as part of their IDP process, they have to be SMART, right? So specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time sensitive or time bound. So we need to have kind of a product that comes from these goals. And as I said earlier, the goals can be professional and personal. So for instance, we look at long-term goals, and that's going to look different for a graduate student versus a postdoc. And then professional goals. So as a mentor, a lot of the discussion and training that I try to provide is maybe even happening outside of science, where I'm giving my students opportunities to hone in on their communication skills, give them teaching opportunities, maybe giving them a lecture in one of my courses. And so that can certainly be another part of the IDP. And then feedback. And so I'd like to kind of hand it over to my graduate student, who's going to share what her process was like constructing her IDP when she joined my lab. So Rachna, take it away.
Thank you. Hi everyone, my name is Rachna and I'm a first year PhD student in the Human Movement Science program at UNC Chapel Hill. I'm really excited to share my experience of writing my IDP. So I was introduced to this whole idea of writing my IDP as soon as I joined the lab in fall last semester. And I actually didn't write my IDP in like a week or 2 weeks. I took an entire semester to sort of learn what skills I need to know for my dissertation, for working in the lab, and sort of incorporate all those skills while I write my IDP. Next slide, please. Cassidy, can we go to the next slide? Yeah, thank you. So before I even started writing my IDP, I first did a self-assessment wherein there were several skills listed out and I had to rate them from 1 to 5, with 1 being something that I'm not confident at and 5 being something that I'm really confident at. And I had to, put them into these 2 categories: as confident, where I scored a 4 and a 5, and not so confident, a 1 and a 2. This sort of gave me a great perspective as to appreciate what my strengths are and at the same time understand what things I might need to improve on and sort of give me a direction in writing my IDP. Next slide. So the IDP is all about writing down goals, right? So goals in terms of what I want to achieve throughout my PhD. So I sort of divided my goals into different sections, and you can see them in the objectives or the skills that I want to learn throughout my PhD degree. So skills like neuroimaging skills, because that's what the lab focuses on, and that's also going to help me build towards my dissertation. Thinking of what topics I want to address in my dissertation and the research questions that I need to have. And this is something that I'm actively working on this semester. Develop my stat skills, enhance my writing skills, both in terms of grant writing and writing manuscripts, and other objectives like being able to present my work. And for each of these skills, I sort of wrote an approach or a strategy that I'm going to implement in order to achieve the objectives that I have and a time frame in which I want to achieve these goals. And the last section is about outcomes. So we can have all these goals, but eventually, what are we trying to achieve out of these goals? And one great piece of advice that I got from Dr. Cassidy was trying to quantify my outcomes. So for example, I mentioned one of the skills that I want to learn was enhancing my writing skills in terms of writing a grant or manuscripts. So one of my outcome and a quantifiable outcome is that I want to get a grant probably by the end of this year or start of next year and be able to publish 3 to 5 first author papers throughout my PhD. Next slide, please. Now, this slide may look very similar to the previous slide, but this is goal setting in a much broader sense as to what I want to do during my PhD in order to achieve my career goals or career aspirations. So just like what I did before, I divided it into different sections, but this time I had, a broader sense of research skills in terms of being able to come up with research questions and implementing them, right from the start process of IRB to, publication eventually. My other goals were teaching and mentoring because eventually I want to be able to take this forward. And job skills in terms of eventually getting a postdoc position or a faculty position and learn management and interpersonal skills in grant writing skills, in manuscript writing skills again. Again, I had approaches and strategies for each of these objectives and a time frame in which I want to achieve them, as well as what sort of an outcome I would like in order to achieve my career aspirations. Next slide, please. Now, I have had all these sort of goals, right? But where do I start from and what do I do? So a great thing was to prioritize my goals, both short term and long term, and divide them into what is high priority and low priority. And these are some of my short term and long term goals. And the best thing that happened to me after I finished writing my IDP was it sort of gave me a motivation and made me more responsible because I had all my goals listed out. I know how I have to achieve them. I knew the time frame, and just be more responsible towards achieving the goals that I wanted. With that, I'm done. Thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to present, and back to Dr. Cassidy.
You're muted, Jessica.
I'm muted. Okay, thanks. That was great. Thanks for taking us through that process. And as she said, this was something that was built over several weeks as she was getting to know the lab. So it's definitely not trying to be burdensome on the student, but it's really trying to develop a really thoughtful, meaningful process. And so I just want to leave everybody with just a few important points. And so one of the most important parts is going over the IDP. And I want to say it's where the mentee leads the conversation, and this provides them with the opportunity to own their goals and also to have it feel less like an assessment is going on. So again, they're leading. What works best is if you have printed copies, sometimes electronic versions, divert eye contact. It just works better this way, at least from personal experience. It's always great to start with what has been accomplished. We describe the role of the mentor and note that it's very similar to the table that I showed a few slides ago with regards to our program's revised mentoring plan. And then finally, the feedback comes last. And so one of the things that's important for me in my lab is that I have expectations of the people coming through my lab, but they should also have expectations of me. And so they provide me the feedback on my mentoring job, what I can be doing better, what they need. And then I give them their feedback to end the meeting with. And then just the advantages of an IDP process. It's a win-win for both the mentee and the mentor. For the mentee, it's letting them know that their goals and their accomplishments have been heard and acknowledged. You know, there's something motivating about creating goals and accountability and sharing those goals with your mentor. And then the opportunity to give feedback to their mentor, as what Mike and Jason pointed out, you know, asking for help and knowing what to ask for are really, really important. And for the mentor, you know, it's wonderful to have motivated individuals working in your lab that are taking pride in their work and that are the primary drivers. And Rachna is certainly a fantastic example. I think something that I'd like to emphasize with the IDP too is that it's really a tool to facilitate communication. And so if something is going on that's maybe prohibiting the goals from being met or hindering, you know, life comes up. You know, that's also a time to talk about personal, interpersonal issues of equity and inclusion that maybe should be discussed in relationship to the IDP. And then finally, as many of you can attest, having mentees succeed is a great way of paying it forward to those that have mentored you. And the IDP is a great process to make sure that happens. All right, and just a few credit slides here. And again, this was from Team Advance, our program at UNC. These were the people that led it, very talented. And a bit more information. I'm more than happy to share these slides too outside of this meeting. And again, thank you so much for your time. And I think there is some nice time for questions. So again, thank you.
Thank you, Jessica and everybody. Yeah, so we have time for questions. You can either put them in the chat, or if you'd like to, I don't know, raise your hands. We've gone different ways, but I think hopefully you've seen a common thread throughout the presentation about the mentor drives the mentee drives the, let's see, I just lost my chat view. let's see. All right, that's a good one from Stacy. I'll put this on the mentorship on Jessica. How have you adapted to mentoring in the era of COVID?
Thanks. So I think it's given us all the opportunity to become more creative, and in some ways it's worked in our favor. The fact that we can have Zoom meetings every time, but Zoom meetings only take you so far, and there's something so powerful about face-to-face communication. So I'll be quite honest, Stacy, it's been challenging, and a lot of what I've been learning have been coming from folks like Jason and Mike. I personally have been doing a mixture of both in-person and online meetings. I hold lab meetings where people can talk about their work. Oftentimes during our lab meetings, we'll present work that we're working on. We'll sometimes watch a TED Talk and discuss it as a group. It's really trying to get ways to maintain engagement. And Mike and Jason, if you want to echo any thoughts coming from your own respective labs.
I would love to share just the same thing I shared with you earlier this week or last week. What day is it? I've forgotten. So in COVID, my lab meetings got incredibly boring and monotonous because we were joining via Zoom, and it was very difficult to feel that enthusiasm that you get about talking science in a room full of people. And so what we decided to do was we'll often read articles, one article in a lab meeting, and that was the worst over Zoom. And so what we decided to do is in our 2-hour lab meeting, our first hour is doing that. We'll dissect a paper. But in our second hour, we've actually been inviting all the authors of the paper we're talking about to join us, right? So finding ways to have that kind of scientific connection that we would all have at conferences, but to do that on a week-to-week basis. It allows us to introduce our trainees to people that they would respect in the field. It gets us just thinking about science in creative ways. I've found it to be a great experience to hear the perspectives of other people as we all find ourselves trying to be mentees a lot. It's been great. So I think that's one of the most valuable things, and we'll probably continue to do that after everyone's vaccinated.
So I attended the MR3 webinar the other night. I don't know if you did, Stacy, but in retrospect, I know what I wished I would have done. I wish I would have set up regular Zoom office hours where I just would have had, I actually didn't realize you could do a personal Zoom like room and just like sit here and work. And if someone came into my personal Zoom space and wanted to talk to me, that would have been a doable thing. I wish I had set, that's what I wish in retrospect I would have set up, like just say every Tuesday, Thursday afternoon from 2 to 4, I'm available. I think that would have been helpful for people like Jessica and other people on my faculty. They had to be much more intentional and let me know that they really needed to talk to me. And whereas I used to do, I typically just drop in and talk to my faculty regularly when I'm face to face.
It's such a quiet room.
Say not a whole lot of questions.
If you're like me, I listen to the other speakers, and I've taken a lot of notes from what I've heard. So maybe everyone's just trying to.
In our department right now, all assistant professors are required to have a mentorship committee, which has been a little controversial. Do others have requirements for mentorship committees? And I think what you see in our chat hasn't been an evolution, because the first iteration did not go over well with some people. So one one suggestion is you could just have a single mentor. Yeah, so the question is, what do you do when a mentee is not making progress as expected despite concerted efforts? Well, that's a challenge as a leader. Obviously, annual reviews is the time where you have some very direct conversations. You have to talk about expectations. You pull out the promotion and tenure documents and all the different criteria. When you have the opportunity to give a raise, you provide differential rewards. That's been a challenge here because in state universities, you oftentimes have either no reward or a tiny bit of reward. And in terms of we just added mentoring on our annual review to discuss are they doing mentoring and things like that. And that was in response to this this new iteration of the mentorship plan. So it just showed up on our new annual review. And no, mentorship is not really given any credit in terms of workload. It's just absorbed in the faculty members' work. I think it sort of contributes to collegiality, which also contributes to promotion and tenure. But it's not, you certainly still have to have the metrics, but if you're not a good citizen, it certainly doesn't help you with promotion and tenure.
If I could just add something to Emmanuel's question too about having those difficult conversations, that was an integral part of the advanced team training that I was talking about. So they actually gave us specific strategies to initiate those conversations. And oftentimes it actually starts with asking your mentees, how's it going? You know, and that question in and of itself certainly kind of brings down the temperature in the room and probably facilitates some good conversation, because chances are, if you as the mentor aren't pleased with how it's going, the mentee is likely not having the feeling could be mutual. So again, there's specific strategies on how to have those conversations, but the important part is those conversations need to happen because, again, of that symbiotic mentee-mentor relationship.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most challenging things from a mentor perspective. When everything's going well, your job's easy and you feel good about your role in the mentor-mentee relationship. I will add that something in our department that we found helpful is in those particularly challenging instances, it's also nice to have those departmental policies and guidelines that sort of convey the timeline and the steps that you must go through, both from a mentor respecting the mentee and a mentee respecting the mentor, just setting up those expectations, not just here's what good behavior looks like, here's what accomplishment looks like, but when it doesn't look like that. And despite the concerted efforts in Emmanuel's question, because those concerted efforts, you want to make sure that those are things that your department can say, here's the steps we must follow. And I do know that we've put that in a memorandum of understanding that everybody signs.
So the research productivity, we live pretty tight on the margin here with our state budget, and we have a very small program, and we state allocations don't pay very much of our budget. So faculty have to support themselves. So we have a faculty practice that supports some of our faculty. So we have, that's a lot of our fixed term faculty who are paying part of their salary with that. So if you're a researcher and you're not paying part of your salary with research and you're not being productive, then I start looking at your workload and shifting you more into teaching and service. So that gets to be a very difficult conversation. So annual reviews can be challenging for those who are not being productive if they're on the tenure track and they're supposed to be doing research. I have different options, and people may or may not find those different options to be pleasant or not. I can ask you, if you're a licensed physical therapist, to pick up clinical practice time. Or I can ask you to take another course or something like that. Or you need to start writing more grants and hitting more targets. So because or you just simply don't get a raise for a long time. And we are totally merit driven here, because we're a school of medicine and we don't get the across the board raises. So we have different pots of money, and that's how you earn your way, either through state allocations, which are our DPT program, or clinic receipts, or research dollars. And then there's just a little bit of buffer to support that. So there are difficult conversations, and I get a little crazy in spring, the faculty can tell you that. So. And we do send, I do everything I can to try to help you. I mean, it's not like we'll try, pairing you, sending you to training here, where some opportunities, it shouldn't be a surprise that you're in this situation, but.
Debbie, there's probably lots of opportunities in physical therapy like this, but the Tiger workshop, you can do that as a re-entry to productivity as well, right? You could
Mm-hmm. I've done it twice.
Yeah, I find that inspiration can drive renewed interest in research productivity, and finding opportunities like Tiger. It could be.
And there's K awards that can be done for, people who are needing to change direction. We have a translational center that can provide some certain types of training and help. We'll send, I would even support sending someone to spend 2 weeks in someone's lab, and support their time there. But you have to have a plan, so.
Send my plan tomorrow.
Can I just address Stacy's question? Stacy Fritz asked about rewarding mentors. And I do recognize that there are some places where there may not be a whole lot of senior faculty and many junior faculty. I don't think Debbie necessarily rewards us. I don't know about Jason. But I think the mentorship process is going to sound really corny, but that is its own reward. I mean, if the folks that you're mentoring are successful, that's really why we're doing it. We're not doing it for any external rewards. It helps everybody. And as we've kind of alluded to, mentoring Jessica is super easy because she's a rock star, right? And similarly, I'm sure Jessica working with Rachna, Rachna's, real up and comer. So, these sorts of things, these situations are somewhat easier. And I agree with some of the questions about mentoring in some more difficult circumstances. Those are really where the challenges lie. Mm-hmm. And I don't necessarily have good answers to those, but we don't get any kind of reward per se, aside from, our faculty being more successful. So.
Well, and that's why the subtitle is creating a collaborative environment. And I think it makes us all happier. And I think we all feel more successful, and we enjoy going to work and seeing each other. And it's really, fewer and far between where we deal with the outliers, and, you're always going to have those, and, but fortunately, we mostly deal with highly motivated, collaborative people. And even those who are the outliers, there's reasons why they've become outliers. And you just have to understand and, you know, try to help them. I'm a believer in trying to find people, like strength finder. You know, if I can find your strength and put you in the right position, sometimes that's the most important thing. And, you know, and the game often changes on you in your career. And that's, I feel bad for you, but that is. So we're getting past time, and I appreciate those of you who have stayed on. I hope this has been interesting for you all to see, and to see that this is, again, I'm hoping, for me, as I said, mentorship was something I sort of sat back and observed throughout my career. And I'm hoping that Rashna sees and feels that being a part of tonight is a form of mentorship for her. And for me, I have my own mentors, and many of them are on this, and some of them are on this, this webinar. And anyways, thank you all for coming. And come see us on April, where we have big data. So it'll be a completely different topic.
Thanks, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Yeah.